The sky above the colony was always a shade of gray, thick with the smoke from the mines and the factories. This was Terra Nova, a world that belonged to the humans in name only. In reality, it belonged to the Forlaxian Empire. The aliens had arrived 10 years ago with big ships and loud weapons. They took the resources of the planet and treated the people like workers. The humans were allowed to live, but they were not free. They were subjects of the Empire. Under the ground, far below the gray sky, a secret facility was buzzing with light and sound. This place was not on the Forlaxian maps. It was hidden deep within a mountain range. The air here was cool and smelled of ozone and old coffee. In the center of the large metal room stood a machine. It did not look like the engines of the Forlaxians. It was a ring of thick black stone, surrounded by wires and glowing tubes. It looked strange and ancient, but the technology inside was very advanced. David Park stood in front of a large screen, typing very fast. He was a thin man with glasses that sat on the edge of his nose. He looked tired, but his eyes were bright. He had been working on this project for 5 years without stopping. "The power levels are steady," David said. His voice was shaking a little bit. "We are ready to test the target." Captain James Choi stood next to him. James was a big man with broad shoulders. He wore a jacket that had seen better days. He held a rifle in his hands, his finger resting near the trigger. James looked at the ring with a hard face. He was a soldier, not a scientist. He did not understand the math, but he understood what this machine could do. It was a weapon. It was a hope. "Be sure, David," James said. "If the Forlaxians catch us, they will kill us all. They will not just kill us, they will kill everyone in this sector." "It will work," a voice came from behind them. It was Olivia Hahn. She was the governor of the colony, but she looked more like a fighter today. She wore a simple uniform and her hair was tied back tightly. She walked into the light of the machine. She looked at David. "The Forlaxians think they are gods because they have ships that travel faster than light. They think we are stuck here." "They are wrong," David said. "We do not need to travel faster than light. We can just step there. That is the idea of Project Rift." High above the planet, the Forlaxian ship floated in silence. It was a massive thing, made of dark silver metal. It looked like a sharp knife cutting through the stars. Inside the ship, the lights were dim and the air was cold. Commander Jack sat on a chair that looked like a throne. He was a tall creature with blue skin and black eyes. He wore armor that shined like oil. He looked at a screen that showed a map of the planet's surface. A small red light was blinking in a mountain area. "What is that energy spike?" Jax asked. His voice sounded like metal grinding on stone. A technician stood below him, shaking with fear. "It is unknown, Commander. It is very high energy. It is coming from the Forbidden Zone." Jax narrowed his eyes. The humans were supposed to be primitive. They were supposed to dig in the mines and make tools for the Empire. They were not supposed to have high energy sources. "They are hiding something," Jax said. "Send a ground team. Crush whatever it is." Back in the underground facility, alarms started to scream. A red light flashed on the walls. "They are coming," Grace Lee shouted as she ran into the main control room. Grace was a strong woman with short hair. She carried a heavy gun on her back. She looked like she was ready for a fight. "Sensors show Forlaxian drop ships. They are 10 minutes away. They know we are here." James Choi turned to David. "How long do you need?" David looked at his screens, sweat running down his face. I need 10 minutes to calibrate the portal. If I do it now, without the check, the object could come out inside a wall. Or it could explode. You have 10 minutes, James said. He looked at Grace. Hold the door. Don't let them enter the main chamber. Grace nodded. She did not smile. I will hold it. My squad is ready. Grace ran out of the room. Her boots made heavy sounds on the metal floor. Outside the facility, in the tunnels that led to the entrance, her team was waiting. There were 20 of them. They were miners, engineers, and farmers. But today, they were soldiers. They wore simple armor and held rifles that they had modified themselves. The Forlaxian dropships landed with a loud thud that shook the mountain. The doors opened, and the soldiers of the Empire marched out. They were tall, armed with laser weapons. They moved like machines, perfect and scary. Fire! Grace yelled. The humans fired from behind barriers. The tunnel filled with the sound of gunfire and explosions. The Forlaxians fired back, their red lasers burning the rock. The smell of smoke and dust filled the air. A human next to Grace fell down, hit in the chest. Grace did not stop. She aimed her heavy gun and fired a burst of bullets at the enemy line, pushing them back. Inside the control room, the noise of the battle was a dull thud through the thick walls. David Park's hands were shaking as he typed. Come on, he whispered to himself. Olivia Hahn stood near the door, holding a pistol. She was not a soldier, but she would fight if she had to. She looked at James. If this fails, the colony is finished. The Empire will not tolerate a rebellion. It won't fail, James said. He looked at the ring. The air around it was starting to shimmer. It looked like heat coming off a road on a hot day. Suddenly, the screen in front of David flashed green. The coordinates are locked, David shouted. I am opening the wormhole. A low humming sound started to fill the room. It grew louder and louder, until the teeth hurt. The ring began to spin, or at least it looked like it was spinning. Inside the circle of black stone, the air changed. It became a window. Through the window, they could not see the wall of the facility. They could see another place. It looked like a desert, with orange sand and two suns in a purple sky. It was a picture of another world, millions of miles away. My God, Olivia whispered. It works. James stared at the portal. He felt a chill go down his spine. The Forlaxians traveled for months or years to go between stars. Humans just made a door. Send the probe, James ordered. David pressed a button. A small metal drone lifted off the floor and flew straight into the shimmering air. It disappeared. A second later, on the screen, they saw a video feed from the drone. It was hovering over the orange desert. It was real. We did it, David said, laughing. We actually did it. But the celebration was short. The blast doors to the control room began to glow red. The Forlaxians outside were using cutting torches to get in. They were almost through the defenses. Grace's voice came over the radio. It was full of static and panic. Captain. They have breached the tunnel. We are falling back. There are too many of them. They have heavy walkers. Get out of there, Grace. James yelled into the radio. Fall back to the secondary vents. We can't hold them for long. Grace screamed. The sound of a large explosion echoed through the radio, then the line went dead. James slammed his fist on the table. The thick metal blast door started to bend. A claw of a machine cut through it like it was paper. The blue face of a Forlaxian soldier looked through the hole. "They are here," Olivia said, raising her pistol. David looked at the portal. It was stable. It was beautiful. And it was their only escape. "We have to go," he yelled. "The portal will close in 30 seconds if we don't stabilize it from the other side." "We can't go," James said, looking at the bent door. "If we go, they will follow us." "Not if we break the machine," David said. "I can set it to overload after we pass." The Forlaxians cut the door completely. It fell with a loud crash. Smoke filled the room. Through the smoke, the red laser sights of the enemy weapons looked like angry eyes. Commander Jax walked in, flanked by two massive walkers. "Surrender, humans," Jax said. His voice was loud and cold. "Your little game is over." James looked at Jax, then he looked at the portal. He grabbed David by the arm. "Olivia, go." Olivia didn't hesitate. She ran toward the shimmering circle. She jumped through it and vanished from the room. Jax roared in anger. "Stop them! Fire!" The Forlaxians fired their lasers. James pushed David toward the portal. "Go. Now." David scrambled to his feet and jumped through the air, disappearing into the desert world. James stood alone for a moment. He raised his rifle and fired at the main power generator of the machine. Sparks flew everywhere. The machine started to smoke and shake violently. "Coward," Jax hissed. James smiled. He didn't aim at the aliens. He aimed at the controls on the console next to him. "See you in hell," he said. He shot the controls. Electricity arced across the room. The portal began to flicker and turn blue. James turned and dived headfirst into the shrinking circle of light just as the room behind him exploded. The shock wave from the explosion hit the portal just as James passed through. On the other side, in the orange desert, the circle of light collapsed with a loud bang. James rolled on the hot sand. He coughed and looked up. He saw Olivia and David standing there, looking back at the empty air where the portal used to be. They were safe. They were on a different world. And they had brought the Forlaxian Empire's worst nightmare with them. The teleported was no longer a dream. It was a reality. And James knew that this was just the beginning. The Forlaxians had the ships, but now, humans had the keys to the universe. The orange sand of the new world was hot against James Choi's boots. The air smelled dry and dusty, nothing like the cool recycled air of the underground facility. He looked around. The sky was a deep purple, and two suns hung low on the horizon, casting long, strange shadows. They were far from Terra Nova. They were completely alone, but they were alive. David Park was sitting on the ground, clutching his equipment bag to his chest. He looked exhausted. His face was covered in sweat and dust. "The portal is closed," he said quietly. "I cannot open it back from here. The generator on the other side is destroyed." "We knew the risk," James said, checking his rifle. He looked at Olivia Hahn. She was wiping sand off her jacket. She looked tired, but her eyes were strong. "We are safe for now. The Forlaxians cannot follow us." "Grace did not make it," Olivia said, looking at the empty space where the portal had been. Her voice was sad. "And the rest of the squad?" James looked down at the sand. He felt a heavy weight in his chest. He had fought alongside those people for years. They were good soldiers. But now was not the time to be sad. They bought us time, James said. We have to make sure their sacrifice was not for nothing. David stood up slowly. He took a small device out of his bag. It looked like a tablet computer, but it was glowing with a strange blue light. This is a portable scanner. I designed it to work with the Rift technology. It can detect energy signatures from the Forlaxian ships. He tapped the screen. A map of the star system appeared. There were small red dots scattered around. Look, David said, pointing at the screen. We are not far from a Forlaxian supply line. This system is a hub for them. They have a big fuel depot on the moon of the fourth planet. James looked at the map. A slow smile appeared on his face. We are behind enemy lines, he said. They think we are stuck on Terra Nova. They think we are primitive. They have no idea we are standing right here in their backyard. We cannot fight an army with 3 people, Olivia said. She was always the practical one. We have 1 rifle, 1 pistol, and a science kit. We don't need an army, James said. We have the element of surprise. And we have David. They found a small cave nearby to hide from the heat of the 2 suns. While Olivia rested, James and David made a plan. They were not just refugees, they were the start of a war. David worked on his equipment. He took parts from the scanner and combined them with the portable teleporter unit he had managed to grab before jumping through the portal. This is the Mark II, David said, holding up a small black box. It was about the size of a book. It can create a small rift. Not big enough for a person to walk through, but big enough to send a signal. Or a bomb. A bomb, James asked. Yes, David said. If I can calculate the coordinates perfectly, we can teleport a small explosive charge directly onto a ship or a building. We do not need a ship to carry it. We just need the math. Far away, in orbit around a gas giant, the Forlaxian commander Jax stood on the bridge of his new ship, the Iron Vengeance. He was angry. The report from Terra Nova was clear. The human facility had self-destruct. There were no survivors. But Jax was not satisfied. He felt like he had missed something. Show me the energy readings from the moment of the explosion, Jax ordered. A Forlaxian technician played the recording. The screen showed a spike of energy that was unlike anything they had seen before. It was not just an explosion. It was a distortion of space. What is this? Jax asked. This pattern, it is not a weapon. It is like a warp drive, but different. Perhaps it was a failed experiment, Commander, the technician suggested. The humans are simple. They probably tried to copy our technology and blew themselves up. Jax looked at the screen. He did not believe it. Humans were stubborn and dangerous. If they had technology that could distort space, they were a threat. I want a full sweep of the sector, Jax ordered. Double the patrols around the supply depots. If there are any survivors, I want them found. Back on the orange planet, the 3 humans were ready. It was night time now. The 2 suns had set, and the 3 moons were in the sky. The air was cold. Target coordinates locked, David whispered. His fingers flew across the keyboard of his small device. The Forlaxian supply depot is on the nearby moon. It is a warehouse for fuel and ammo. James held a small metal sphere in his hand. It was a fusion bomb, very powerful but very small. Ready, he said. Opening the rift, David said. The air in front of them shimmered. A small circle of light opened, only about 2 feet wide. Through the circle, they could see a gray metal room. It was the inside of the Forlaxian warehouse. An alien worker was walking by, carrying a box. The worker looked at the circle with surprise, but before he could scream, James threw the metal sphere through the hole. "Close it!" James yelled. David tapped a button. The circle vanished. 3 seconds later, a bright flash of light lit up the night sky on the horizon. A low rumble shook the ground under their feet. James looked through his binoculars. In the dark sky, above the moon of the fourth planet, a new star had appeared. The Forlaxian depot was gone. Destroyed without a single human ship leaving the ground. "Yes," James said quietly. "Grace would have liked that." High above them, the alarm on the Iron Vengeance screamed. The bridge turned red. "Report!" Jax roared. "Commander! The depot on Moon 4 is gone." A technician shouted. "It just exploded. But our sensors show no ships in the area. No missiles. Nothing. It just blew up." Jax grabbed the technician by the throat. "What do you mean, nothing? Bombs do not just appear." "Yes, sir," another technician stammered. "I detected a small spatial anomaly just before the explosion. It lasted for only a second. It was like a door opening and closing." Jax let the technician go. He stared at the screen. "A door," he whispered. "The humans. They did not die. They are teleporting explosives." The idea terrified him. The Forlaxian Empire was powerful because they had the best ships and the biggest guns. If the humans could attack from anywhere, at any time, without warning, then all the ships in the galaxy could not protect them. "Find them!" Jax screamed. "Scan every planet for human life signs." For the next week, the humans played a dangerous game. They moved from planet to planet using the portable rift device. They did not stay in one place for long. They were ghosts. They hit a communications relay. They sabotaged a water purification plant. They destroyed a small patrol ship. Every time, the Forlaxians were confused. They saw explosions, but they never saw an enemy. Samuel Kim, a young communications officer who had been trapped on a different Forlaxian station, managed to escape during one of the raids. He met up with James and his team on a rocky asteroid. "I heard what you are doing," Samuel said. He was young and looked scared, but he was smart. "The Forlaxians are panicking. They are pulling ships away from the front lines to protect their supply bases. They don't know where the next attack will come from." "Good," James said. "Fear is a weapon." "But Captain," Samuel said, "they are starting to use wide-range scanners. They are looking for the energy signature of the rift device. It is getting harder to hide." James nodded. He knew they could not run forever. They needed a bigger plan. They needed to hit the Empire where it hurt the most. "We need to go to the capital," James said. "We need to send a message." "That is suicide," David said. "The capital is heavily guarded. There are thousands of ships." "They are looking for ships," James said. "They are looking for armies. They are not looking for 3 people with a suitcase." Olivia looked at the map Samuel had brought. "There is a meeting of the High Command in 2 days," she said. "They will be at the station orbiting the Forlaxian home world." James looked at his team. They were tired, dirty, and outnumbered by 1,000,000,000 to 1. But for the first time in human history, they were not the victims. They were the hunters. "David," James said, "can you make a rift big enough for all of us?" David looked at his device. He smiled tiredly. I can try. But we only get one shot. Then let's make it count, James said. They prepared themselves. They checked their weapons. They packed their bags. They were just 3 humans, David, Olivia, and James, with young Samuel helping them. Against the massive empire, they looked like nothing. But they had a secret. They had a key to the universe that the aliens did not understand. The Forlaxians thought they owned the stars. They thought that because they had big ships, they were safe. But they were wrong. The humans were coming. Not with a fleet, but with a single step. And the blast that followed would shake the foundation of the empire forever. The Forlaxian home world was a place of great beauty and cold order. From space, it looked like a blue marble wrapped in rings of silver clouds. Around it floated the Grand Station, a massive city made of metal and glass where the leaders of the empire lived and made their laws. Thousands of ships flew around it like bees around a hive. It was the heart of the most powerful government in the galaxy. No enemy had ever dared to attack it. The Forlaxians believed it was impossible. High Exarch Varek sat in his high tower on the station. He was an old alien with skin the color of deep space and eyes that glowed with a dim light. He wore robes made of gold thread. He looked out the window at the stars, but he did not see the beauty. He saw a map that was turning red. The attacks continue, Varek said softly. His voice was like the wind blowing through a tomb. Commander Jax stood in front of him, his head bowed low. Yes, Exarch. In the last month, we have lost 12 supply depots, 3 fuel refineries, and 2 cruisers. The enemy strikes and then vanishes. We cannot catch them. Varek turned around slowly. You command the greatest fleet in history, Jax. Yet you cannot stop a group of primitive humans. They are not using ships, Exarch, Jax said, frustration in his voice. They are using some kind of portal technology. It is fast, small, and untraceable until it is too late. We do not know where they are coming from. Varek walked back to his chair and sat down. This technology is a threat to our stability. If other worlds learn that humans can bypass our fleets, they will rebel. We must show them that the Empire is stronger than any trick. Bring the fleet here. Every ship. We will protect the home world with a wall of steel. If the humans try to attack us here, we will crush them. Jax nodded. It will be done. But how do we lure them here? Varek smiled. It was not a nice smile. They want freedom for their colony. Announce that we are preparing to execute the leaders of Terra Nova tomorrow. Broadcast it on all channels. The humans will not be able to resist trying to save them. They will come to us. Deep underground on a small, uninhabited moon nearby, the humans watched the Forlaxian broadcast. The holographic image showed the Forlaxian arena, ready for a killing. It was a lie, of course. The leaders of Terra Nova were already dead, but the humans didn't know that. They are gathering the fleet, Samuel Kim said. He was typing quickly on his laptop, which was connected to a stolen Forlaxian sensor buoy. Look at this. There are thousands of ships moving toward the home world. It is a trap. James Choi sat on a crate, cleaning his rifle. The blue light of the hologram reflected on his face. Of course it is a trap, James said. They want us to attack the station so they can surround us. We cannot go there, Olivia Hahn said. She looked worried. We don't have the firepower to fight that many ships. One shot from a main cannon and we are dust. David Park was in the corner of the room, working on the Rift device. It was glowing brighter now, and humming with a sound that made the hair on their arms stand up. "We cannot fight them with guns," David said. "But we don't need to. The Forlaxians rely on their ships. They rely on their fleet being between us and the planet. If we want to win, we have to remove the fleet." "How?" Grace Lee asked. She was sharpening a large combat knife. Since joining the team, she had become the muscle of the group. "We don't have a nuke big enough for all of them." David stopped working and looked at them. He looked tired, but his eyes were intense. "We don't need a nuke. We need gravity." He pulled up a star map on the wall. "The Forlaxian home world is next to a large gas giant. The gas giant has very strong gravity. There is an asteroid field nearby. Big rocks, heavy rocks." James looked at the map, then at David. "You want to throw rocks at them?" "I want to teleport one," David corrected. "If I can link the Rift device to the colony's main reactor on Terra Nova, I can boost the power. I can open a portal large enough to move a massive asteroid. I can drop that asteroid right in the middle of their fleet." Samuel gasped. That's insane. The math is incredibly complex. If you miss, you hit the planet." "I won't miss," David said. "But the reactor on Terra Nova is heavily guarded. We have to go back there to turn it on. It is the only power source strong enough. So, we walk into the lion's den to get the keys to destroy the lion," Grace said, testing the edge of her knife. "I like it." "It is dangerous," Olivia warned. "If we go back to Terra Nova, we are surrounded. We might never get out." "We have no choice," James said, standing up. "The Forlaxians think they are safe because they have distance. They think they are safe because they have walls. We are going to show them that distance doesn't matter." The plan was set. Samuel would stay behind on the moon to monitor the Forlaxian communications. The others would use a small, stealthy shuttle they had stolen from a patrol ship to fly to Terra Nova. It would be a one-way trip if things went wrong. The shuttle moved silently through space, dark as a shadow. They landed in the old mining sector, far from the main city. The Forlaxians were focused on the capital, so the security on the colony was lighter than usual, but still dangerous. They moved through the ruined streets of the city. James took the lead, signaling silently to Grace and Olivia. David followed them, carrying the heavy portable Rift unit on his back. They reached the old entrance to the underground facility. The facility was a wreck. The walls were black from fire. Debris was everywhere. But the deep power lines that connected to the planet's core were still there. "We need to get to the main junction room," David whispered. "That is where I hook this up." They moved carefully down the dark hallway. Suddenly, a laser blast hit the wall next to James. "Contact!" Grace shouted. A squad of Forlaxian soldiers was waiting for them. They had set an ambush. They knew the humans might return to the source. "Take cover!" James yelled. He fired his rifle, the sound echoing loudly in the metal corridor. Grace fired her heavy machine gun, spraying bullets at the aliens. The Forlaxians had energy shields, but the humans were using armor-piercing rounds, which cracked the shields. Olivia spotted a support beam above the aliens. "Grace! Shoot the beam!" Grace aimed and fired. The bullets chewed through the metal. The beam groaned and snapped, crashing down on top of the alien squad. The ambush was crushed in seconds. "Go!" James shouted. "Before more come." They ran to the junction room. David ran to the large power console. He opened his kit and started to splice wires from the rift device into the alien system. "I need time," David shouted. "The system is fighting me." "Hurry up," Grace said, standing at the door. She could hear the heavy footsteps of robots coming down the hall. "We have company." James reloaded his weapon. He looked at Olivia. "We promised to give humanity a future," he said. "This is it." The power in the room began to rise. The lights flickered. The rift device on David's back started to whine, a high-pitched sound that hurt their ears. "Connection established," David yelled. "I am linked to the core. I have enough power. Target the asteroid." Samuel's voice came over the radio, faint but clear. "I am sending you the coordinates. The fleet is moving into formation. You have one shot." David closed his eyes. He could see the asteroid field in his mind. He could feel the mass of the rocks. He selected the biggest one. It was a monster, made of iron and stone, drifting peacefully in space. "Got it," David said. Opening portal. The air in the small room warped. A hole opened up, not in the room, but in the data stream. The energy flowed out of Terra Nova, across the void of space, and into the asteroid belt. High above the Forlaxian home world, the sky was beautiful. The stars were bright. Then, space ripped open. A hole, hundreds of miles wide, appeared right in the center of the Forlaxian Grand Fleet. Out of the hole came the asteroid. It did not drift out, it shot out with the speed of a bullet. The silence of space was broken by invisible violence. The asteroid slammed into the Forlaxian flagship. The ship, which was the size of a city, crumpled like a piece of paper. The asteroid kept going, hitting the destroyers and the cruisers next to it. The explosion was blinding. The shock wave expanded, knocking ships together like toys in a bathtub. Fire, oxygen, and metal scattered across the dark sky. On the bridge of the Grand Station, High Exarch Varek stood up. His drink spilled on the floor. He watched the screen in horror. "What is that?" he screamed. "Where did that come from?" "The sensors," a technician cried. "It is a rift. The energy signature matches Terra Nova." "They brought a rock," Varek whispered. "They moved a moon." The blast wave hit the station. The lights flickered. Alarms screamed. The station shook violently. Back in the dark room on Terra Nova, David fell to his knees, exhausted. The rift device was smoking. "Did it work?" Olivia asked, helping him up. David looked at his screen. A smile spread across his face. "Look." The news feed from the Forlaxian home world showed chaos. The fleet was gone. The station was damaged. The perfect shield around the Empire had been broken. "We are not trapped anymore," James said, looking at the screen. "Now the real war begins." The silence in the control room on Terra Nova was heavy. It was not a peaceful silence. It was the shocked silence that comes after a loud noise. David Park was sitting on the cold floor, leaning against the blackened wall. The rift device on his back was smoking slightly, smelling like burned plastic and ozone. His hands were shaking uncontrollably. "Is it done?" Olivia Hahn asked. She was peering out of a small crack in the blast door that led to the surface. Her voice was low and tense. "It is done," David whispered. He looked at the small screen on his wrist. The energy spike was off the charts. "We successfully teleported the asteroid." Samuel Kim's voice crackled over the radio. It was filled with static, but the excitement was clear. guys. You have to see this. The Forlaxian network is going crazy. The asteroid hit the flagship and took out half the fleet with the shock wave. The Grand Station is damaged. They are not attacking. They are running away. James Choi let out a long breath. He slumped his shoulders, the weight of the last few days finally catching up with him. We hit them, he said. We actually hit them. But we are not safe yet, Grace Lee said from her position by the door. She was reloading her weapon, her movements sharp and precise. The explosion might have scared the big ships, but there are still thousands of ground troops on this planet. And they know we are here. They will be coming. James stood up straight. He grabbed his rifle. Then we fight. Wait, David said. He struggled to his feet. He pointed to a red light blinking on the main console. The overload I caused on the reactor didn't just send the asteroid. It destabilized the power grid. The Forlaxian ground defenses are offline. Their automated turrets, their sensor domes, their force fields, they are all blind right now. Olivia looked at him. For how long? Maybe 10 minutes. Maybe 20, David said. Then the backup generators will kick in. James looked at the team. That is our window. We need to get to the evacuation shuttle. But we can't just run. If we run, they will hunt us down. We need to break their hold on this colony completely. How? Grace asked. We are out of big rocks to throw. We don't need rocks, James said. We need to take the general. The Forlaxian ground commander, Krell. He is in the main garrison in the city center. If we capture him, we can force the remaining troops to stand down. We can trade him for the colony's freedom. That is a suicide mission, Samuel said over the radio. The garrison is heavily fortified. Even with their automated defenses down, there are thousands of soldiers inside. It is the only way, James said. David, can you get us to the city center with a portable jump? David looked at his smoking device. I have enough energy left for one more short jump. Just us. But we will be surrounded when we land. James nodded. Good. I like close quarters. David started to type on the device. The air in the room began to shimmer again. Get ready. Coordinates set. Main plaza, right in front of the garrison. Let's go, James said. The four of them, James, Olivia, Grace, and David, stood shoulder to shoulder. Samuel stayed behind on the radio to guide them. With a flash of blue light, the underground room vanished. They felt a strange sensation in their stomachs, like falling, and then they landed hard on concrete. They were in the city center. The sky was filled with black smoke from the distant battle in space, but the city was quiet. The big Forlaxian flags hung limp from the buildings. In front of them stood the main garrison building. It was a massive block of dark metal, with heavy doors and guard towers. Suddenly, the silence broke. Forlaxian soldiers had seen them appear. They shouted and raised their weapons. Open fire! A commander screamed. Red laser bolts filled the air. The concrete around the humans exploded into dust. Take cover! James yelled. They dove behind a large stone fountain in the middle of the plaza. Laser blasts hit the stone, chipping pieces away. We are pinned down. Olivia shouted. She fired her pistol over the edge of the fountain, but it was not enough to stop the hundreds of aliens advancing on them. Grace pulled a grenade from her belt. She pulled the pin with her teeth. Fire in the hole. She threw the grenade high into the air. It landed in the middle of the advancing soldiers. Boom! The explosion sent aliens flying. It gave the humans a few seconds. "We need to get inside that building," James said. "David, can you disable the door? I need to get close." David yelled back. "Cover him," James ordered. James stood up and fired his rifle in long bursts. He aimed at the aliens who were trying to shoot David. Grace joined him, her heavy gun tearing through the air. David ran from the fountain, crouching low. He reached the heavy metal door of the garrison. He pulled a small hacking tool from his pocket and jammed it into the lock panel. Come on," he muttered. A laser blast hit the wall next to his head, singing his hair. He flinched but kept typing. "Got it?" The massive metal doors groaned and began to slide open. David dove inside. "Clear." James and the others ran toward the door, firing backwards to keep the aliens back. They slid through the opening just as the doors closed again, locking out the army outside. They were inside the garrison. The hallways were lit with red lights. Alarms were blaring. This was the heart of the enemy. "They will be swarming this building in minutes," Olivia said. "We move fast." "Where is the general?" "Top floor," David said, looking at a map on his device. "The command center." They started up the stairs. They did not take the elevator because it was too dangerous. They ran up the metal steps, their boots clanging loudly. On the third floor, they met a squad of Forlaxian elite guards. These aliens wore heavy armor and carried energy swords. No words were spoken. It was a fight for survival. Grace engaged the first one, using her rifle like a club to block a sword swing. She kicked the alien in the knee and shot him. James fired at two others, aiming for the gaps in their armor. Olivia covered their rear, shooting anyone who tried to come up the stairs behind them. They were outnumbered, but they were fighting for their home. The aliens were fighting for a paycheck. That made all the difference. They fought with anger and desperation, pushing the aliens back until the stairs were clear. "Keep moving," James shouted, wiping blood from a cut on his forehead. They reached the top floor. The double doors to the command center were locked. Grace took a breaching charge, a small explosive from her pack, and stuck it to the lock. "Fire in the hole," she yelled again. The blast blew the doors inward. The four humans rushed into the room, weapons raised. The command center was large, filled with screens and aliens working at consoles. At the far end of the room, standing by a window looking out at the burning city, was General Krell. He was tall, even for a Forlaxian. He wore a cape of red and gold. He turned around slowly as the humans entered. "Primitive fools," Krell spat. "Do you think capturing me changes anything? The Empire is eternal. The damage to the fleet is a setback, but we will rebuild. And we will burn this planet to ash for what you have done today." James walked forward, his rifle pointed at Krell's chest. "We aren't here to negotiate the future of the galaxy, Krell. We are here to negotiate your life." "You have no leverage," Krell said, smiling cruelly. "Look at the screen." James glanced at a large monitor. It showed the backup generators coming online across the city. The automated defenses were powering up. In the sky, Forlaxian shuttles were descending from the remaining ships. They were bringing thousands more troops. "We are surrounded," Samuel said in James's ear. "The city is being sealed off. You are trapped in there." David ran to a console. He typed furiously. "James, listen to me. The Forlaxian command structure is very rigid. If the general is eliminated, the local army goes into standby mode. They wait for orders from the capital. But the capital is in chaos. Krell laughed. You cannot kill me. I have a personal shield. Krell pushed a button on his wrist. A blue shimmering field appeared around him. Bullets would not pass through it. See, Krell said. You are weak. James looked at Grace. He nodded at her. She nodded back. She knew what to do. While James kept his rifle aimed at Krell, drawing his attention, Grace pulled a strange device from her bag. It was a Forlaxian EMP grenade they had modified. It disabled electronics, including shields. Hey, Krell! James shouted. Your fleet blew up real good. Krell roared in anger. I will kill you. While Krell was distracted, Grace tossed the EMP grenade. It rolled across the floor and stopped right at Krell's feet. What is this? Krell looked down. Zap! The EMP went off. It was a silent burst of energy. Krell's shield flickered and died. The lights in the command center went out, replaced by emergency red lighting. Now! James yelled. He fired 3 shots. They hit Krell in the chest. The general fell to the floor, dead. The room went silent. The Forlaxian officers froze. They looked at their dead leader, then at the humans. David was typing on the console again. I am broadcasting a signal from the general's personal code, he said. I am ordering all ground troops to retreat to the ships and surrender. Will they believe it? Olivia asked. They have to, David said. Their programming forces them to obey the chain of command. Without the general, and with the fleet in chaos, they are lost. Outside, the sound of battle changed. The Forlaxian troops stopped firing. They looked at their wrist communicators, confused. They received the order to stand down. Slowly, weapons were lowered. The humans in the streets, who had been fighting back with sticks and stones, looked up in disbelief. The invasion was stopping. We did it, Samuel said over the radio. They are leaving. The transports are lifting off. James lowered his rifle. He looked at Krell's body on the floor. It was over. They had won the battle for Terra Nova. But he knew it was not the end of the war. The Empire would be back. And when they came back, they would be angry. We have to get back to the shuttle, James said. We need to get off this planet before the Forlaxian fleet realizes what happened and changes their minds. They ran down the stairs, out of the building, and into the street. The surviving colonists were cheering, but the team did not stop. They ran to the secret landing pad where Samuel was waiting with the shuttle. As they flew away from the city, watching the Forlaxian ships retreat into the sky, James felt a mix of relief and fear. They had survived. They had liberated their world. But he knew they had woken a sleeping giant. We are going to need a bigger army, Grace said, looking out the window. No, James said. We are going to need a bigger plan. They looked at the stars above. The stars were beautiful, and for the first time, they seemed open. The humans were coming. And the universe was not ready for them. The shuttle flew silently through the dark void of space. Inside, the mood was serious but hopeful. They had escaped Terra Nova. They had left the Forlaxian ground troops in confusion and retreat. But everyone on the small ship knew that the hardest part was still ahead of them. James Choi sat in the pilot's seat, watching the stars streak by. On the radar, a massive red dot was appearing. It was the Forlaxian home world. Around it, the remaining ships of the Empire were gathering. They were scared, and when animals are scared, they become dangerous. They are forming a blockade, Grace Lee said from the co-pilot seat. She pointed at the screen. Hundreds of ships. They are protecting the planet like a shell. David Park was in the back of the shuttle, working on his equipment. He looked pale. He had not slept in 2 days. The High Exarch Varek is there, David said. He is on the Grand Station. He is gathering all the remaining power of the Empire to make a final stand. We have to finish this, James said. If we leave now, they will just rebuild. In 10 years, they will come back with 10,000 ships. We have to break them now. Olivia Hahn came forward from the passenger area. She held a tablet. Samuel has intercepted a transmission from Varek, she said. He is not just defending. He is preparing to fire the Doomsday Beam. James froze. The Doomsday Beam, I thought that was a myth. It is real, Olivia said. It is a weapon on the Grand Station. It takes a month to charge, but it can destroy a planet from across the solar system. He is going to fire it at Terra Nova as a punishment for our rebellion. David looked up, his eyes wide. When? In 2 hours, Olivia said. James gripped the controls until his knuckles turned white. Then we don't have time for a plan. We have to act now. We cannot fight that fleet, Grace said. We don't have the ammo. We don't have the ships. We don't need to fight them, David said quietly. He stood up and walked to the front. He looked at the planet on the screen. Remember the asteroid that was just a rock? We pushed it with a rift. But we can do more. What do you mean? James asked. The rift connects 2 points in space, David explained. We pushed the asteroid to the fleet. But what if we pull the fleet to something? James looked at him. Like a black hole. Yes, David said. There is a black hole on the edge of the system. It is small, but very heavy. If I open a rift in the middle of their formation, and link the other side to the gravity well of the black hole, the ships won't be able to escape. The gravity will suck them in. Can you target the Grand Station specifically? James asked. I can, David said. But the rift will have to be huge. It will require all the power we have. And once I open it, I cannot close it quickly. We will be vulnerable. Do it, James said. We need to get closer, David said. I need to be within firing range to lock the coordinates. That means flying right into their blockade. James took a deep breath. Okay. Grace, get the gun turrets ready. David, prepare the device. Olivia, make sure everyone is strapped in. The shuttle turned and accelerated toward the Forlaxian home world. The small ship moved fast, dodging debris. As they approached the planet, the Forlaxian ship saw them. Alarm sirens blared across the enemy fleet. Intruder! A voice shouted over the open channel. It is the human ship. Destroy it! Green laser fire filled the space around them. The shuttle shook violently as shots grazed the shields. Hold her steady! James yelled. He spun the ship, diving under a massive cruiser. David, now! I am trying! David shouted. He was typing with one hand and holding onto his seat with the other. The targeting computer is confused by their interference. Grace fired the rear guns, blasting a small fighter ship that was trying to latch onto them. We have 10 more seconds before they overload our shields. James saw the Grand Station ahead. It was huge, a monstrous structure of metal. The main cannon of the doomsday beam was glowing blue, charging up to fire on Terra Nova. "We are not going to make it," Olivia said. "Yes, we are," James said. He pushed the throttle to maximum. The shuttle shot forward, flying straight toward the Grand Station. "David, give me the rift." "Got it?" David yelled. He slammed his hand onto the red button. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, space itself seemed to tear apart. A massive circle of black light opened in the middle of the Forlaxian formation. It was not like the small portals they had used before. This was a giant, swirling vortex. Inside the circle, there was no light. There was only darkness. The gravity from the black hole on the other side instantly grabbed the ships. The Forlaxian cruisers and destroyers were pulled toward the hole. They tried to reverse their engines, but it was too strong. The Grand Station was too big to move fast. It drifted toward the vortex. "What is happening?" Varek screamed on the bridge of the station. "Shut it down. The gravity is too strong, Exarch." The pilot shouted. "We are being pulled in." The vortex grew larger. The station began to crumble as the gravity stretched the metal. The blue light of the doomsday beam flickered and died as the power systems were ripped apart. The station was torn into pieces, swallowed by the black hole. One by one, the ships of the Empire followed, dragged into the darkness. The shock wave of gravity knocked the shuttle sideways. James fought the controls, struggling to keep them from being sucked into. "David, close it!" James yelled. "I can't. The gravity is pulling the rift open wider." David screamed. "We have to get out of here." James turned the shuttle away from the planet and pushed the engines to the limit. The gravity of the black hole was chasing them, a massive invisible hand trying to drag them back. The shuttle groaned under the stress. Metal twisted and sparks flew from the console. "Come on." James gritted his teeth. "Fly." Slowly, agonizingly, the shuttle pulled away. The gravity lost its grip. The vortex behind them began to shrink as the power ran out. Finally, with a loud snap, the rift closed. Silence returned to space. James floated the shuttle, breathing heavily. He looked back at the Forlaxian home world. The fleet was gone. The Grand Station was gone. The dark sky was clear. "We did it," Grace whispered. "They are gone." "The Empire is finished," Olivia said, a smile on her face. "Without the fleet, without the High Exarch, the other systems will rebel. They have no power to stop us." David slumped back in his seat, exhausted but happy. "We used the universe's strongest weapon against them," he said. "And we won." James looked at the stars. They were not just lights anymore. They were destinations. The Forlaxians had used their ships to control the galaxy for thousands of years. They built walls and borders. They told humans where they could go and what they could do. But today, the humans had shown that walls do not matter. Borders do not matter. With the rift, distance was nothing. The humans could go anywhere, instantly. They could appear, strike, and vanish like ghosts. "We should go home," James said. "Terra Nova is safe." "And then what?" Grace asked. James looked at his team. He saw the future in their eyes. "And then we rebuild, but this time, we don't hide. We explore. We help others. The galaxy is open now." The shuttle turned toward the distant star where Terra Nova was waiting. It would be a long journey back without a teleporter, but nobody minded. They were flying free. They were flying under their own flag. The empire had fallen. The blast that followed the teleporter had ended 1,000 years of tyranny. It was the end of the Forlaxian story. But for humanity, it was just the beginning of chapter 1. The stars were shining, and for the first time, they belonged to everyone.